Hey everyone, excited to be back for this week's edition of Frequently Asked Questions for Commercial Real Estate. In today's video, what I wanted to do was talk about something that's important, in particular for those who are looking to lease commercial space, and that is what's known as what exactly is a shell lease. Now, before we dive into this video, I would really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe to this channel. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm and ensures more and more people can learn about the many facets of commercial real estate. So now that you've done that, go ahead and subscribe below. Let's go ahead and dive right into this video. So now you may be asking, what is a shell lease? Now, as the name suggests, it's a lease that involves a shell space. So if I'm a tenant and I'm looking to occupy space, a shell would be something that is not particularly ready for my use. And there's different grades of shell leases, meaning that there's some shell leases that are a space is completely unfinished, to all the way to a shell lease where pretty much everything's ready to go except some of the minor tweaks that need to be taken care of in order to get you into the space. So in this video, we're going to go through the two different types of shell leases that you need to look out for as you're looking to lease commercial space. Now, the first type of shell lease is one that involves a cold shell. Now, a cold shell is one that pretty much a space that has no finishes whatsoever. So it has no furnishing. A lot of times it doesn't even have any foundation. So what you'll see is or infrastructure. So it'll have gravel instead of having cement for flooring. It will have no HVAC system or no plumbing. Why do landlords like doing this? A lot of times it's because they don't have to invest a significant amount in building out the space until they find a tenant that moves in, and then they can negotiate what they're going to be doing as far as the build out cost is concerned. This is obviously very attractive for landlords for that exact reason. There's not a huge cash outlay in order to get a space ready to go for a particular tenant. Along with that, it allows tenants to be able to do build outs that are a lot more easy than, having to tear down an existing space and then rebuild it to do something else. So for example, if you go to a landlord that used to have a tenant that was let's say a barber shop, and you're a restaurant, you're going to have to tear out a lot of the existing fixtures. You're going to have to maybe dig into the floors to change out the plumbing. I mean, there's a lot involved with repurposing a space for a new use. And obviously having a cold shell allows you to be able to, just hit the ground running from start to finish. Now, one of the downsides of a cold shell is that, it takes a longer time to build out. And oftentimes it requires a larger cash outflow from a tenant. So that's something to consider as you're looking at cold shells to operate. Now, one of the benefits of a cold shell is that typically the lease rate, because there's less improvements involved, is going to be lower than the next type of shell lease, which is a warm shell. As the name suggests, a warm shell means that the HVAC systems or partial or full HVAC systems in place. You're typically going to have fully functioning electrical closets, mechanicals, elevators, restrooms. Essentially, it's almost ready for a tenant to occupy the space. Now, these are beneficial because it limits the outflow of cash from a tenant to be able to build out the space to fit their use. Typically, all you're going to need to do is get in there, put up some walls, or modify some of the things within the space, and now you're ready to operate. Therefore, it shrinks the amount of time it takes you to get up and operational, and also limits the amount of cash outflow you need to make in order to build out the space. Now, one of the downsides from that is that because the landlord has to spend money to be able to get that space ready for your use, or at least get it almost ready for your use, typically the lease rates for warm shells are going to be a little bit higher. And a type of warm shell that you'll see a lot of times in the open market is called a vanilla box or vanilla shell. And that's when, along with having the HVAC systems in place, electrical closet, etc., the drywall is usually prepped and ready for you to paint. And then you may also incorporate some drop ceilings in there. So it's a little bit more ready for you to go as it pertains to your ability to occupy the space. So those are the two types of shells incorporated in a shell lease. So as you as the tenant, what do you do now? Well, as you're looking at these spaces, understand that cold shells, when you're looking at shell leases, are going to require a higher upfront cost and, longer build out times, but typically the lease rates for those spaces are going to be shorter. So if you're going to commit to a space for a long period of time, then you may want to consider looking at a cold shell, because now you're going to have an initial cash outflow, but the lease rate over the life of that term is typically going to be smaller. On the other side, if you're looking into a warm shell, obviously the cash outflow for the landlord is a little bit higher, therefore your lease rate is going to be higher. However, you as the tenant are not going to have to do as much of a build out on the front end, and you can get operational a little bit more quickly. So you got to weigh the pros and cons as you're looking at these opportunities. If you're looking in the Louisville market or surrounding areas, I'm a commercial real estate agent in town. I'd be happy to help you interpret some of these lease agreements to see which one is right for you. If you want to reach out to me, my number is 502-536-7315, or you can reach me via email at rafael@crescentygroup.com. If you like this content, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps the YouTube algorithm, ensures more and more people can hear this message. So thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week.